And I'm going to start the Twitch highlight from right here. Okay, so this is Tuesday. Tuesday's our raid leader discussion / eval. It's just where we go over things that are raid leader related. It's not super formal. You guys, it's going to be like an ongoing QA. You guys can ask questions about raid leading and things like that. I'm going to go over a couple of topics each week. This week the topics are fight preparation when going into a new boss fight as a raid leader, some of the things that you look for and how to deal with those. And then after we get done talking about some of those things, we're going to move into recruitment and how a raid leader should be involved with recruitment for your guild. Okay, so those are the two topics that we're going to cover today. If you guys come up with questions at any point, you know, make sure to put them in chat, and if for some reason I miss them, just ask them again whenever you know, we're doing the questions from the stream chat. All right, so with that said, we're going ahead and kick it off. I know a lot of you guys are probably, you know, have played the game for a while. You know, you've been going through progression to the point of, you know, you step into a new boss and you don't really know what's going on, right? And depending if it doesn't really matter if you're a 10-man or a 25-man guild. The same obstacles present themselves whenever you're, you know, entering the situation. That is, having a group of people, whether 10 or 25 men, going into a situation where they don't really fully understand what's going on. You know, say it's like a new boss fight, and you know, you've got people who have never seen the fight, and whether if your guild's at the level of, you know, going into a boss fight and not even having a video to look at, so you're like cutting edge progression. That's kind of the way that it is for us when we go into fights on PTR and whatnot. We literally have no idea of what's going on. Or if you're a guild that has had the benefit of watching videos, you know, and videos come out more, or nowadays come out pretty much right after, you know, the second kill has been had. Guilds usually hold on to them until at least 2 guilds have killed it, and then videos start coming out. But either way, like I said, there's the same set of obstacles, and that's stuff that just goes from, and this is all stuff that we're going to go over today, and that's things from quality versus quantity of pulls. We're going to go over positioning, you know, the importance of doing dry runs, comp-based decisions, timings, and then how to implement your raids cooldowns and things like that. Alright, so to do those, we are going to be using a couple of different references. I'm going to be going over, again, this is a common theme here with my stream. We're going to be using World of Logs, and outside of World of Logs, we're going to be using this site right here. One sec. BossBlueprint.com. We're going to be going over that as well. Okay, so those are two things that we're going to be using. And then outside of that, we're just going to be going over, you know, I've got some files on my computer that I can show you guys about, you know, some of the stuff that we did on progression. A lot of the, you know, a big thing that we end up using is something super fancy, and you don't have to have some, you know, crazy program. We're just going to go over how to use just things as simple as MSPaint to, you know, benefit your guild, and I'll give you guys some examples of that based on some of our progression pulls and whatnot. Okay, so let me just get that up, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Here's a picture that I wanted to show you guys, and then again a couple of other ones. Actually, just go and get the one open from Blood Legion. Your computer's like raping itself right now. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to... Alright, here's one of them that I'm going to end up showing you guys, and... Here's actually a full screen version. And then another one that we're going to go over after that is just like, let's see, let me find it. Oh, whatever. That's going to get point across. Okay, so with that said, things going into looking at a new boss fight and things like that. Okay, as a raid leader, it's your job to make sure that everybody gets spun up as quick as possible. So you're going to have to be dealing with, you know, if it's a 10-man, you're going to be dealing with 9 other people. or even up to like 13, because you may have some people that you're swapping in and out and you want to have them up to speed with the rest of the guild. If you're on a 25 man, that number's bumped up to probably like anywhere from 24 to probably 31 people, you know, somewhere in that range. You know, if it's a guild with more people, by all means, you know, the number would apply there as well. So one of the main things that we try and do going into it and learning it is just making sure that everybody stays on the same page. And right off the bat, you know, a lot of times what guilds fall into the problem of, you know, the problem they end up having is they sit around and theory craft too much. And what I mean by that, I mean, trust me, that's a problem that we have to deal with at pretty much every turn on progression is, you know, we end up a lot of times just sitting around talking about things when really you just need to get some pulls in, you know, and that's not to say that, you know, theory crafting is a bad thing. I'm just trying to get the point across that when you're going into a new boss, one of the first things that you need to do is just get some pulls in. And you have to balance that with, you know, it's just quantity versus quality. You don't want to just, you know, dig slam it to the point to where you're not really making progress. You're pulling so quick people don't learn from it and things like that. You have to, you know, weigh options, make you know, small tweaks. You know, and you don't want to just sit there and talk about it for an hour either. So that's something that you guys need to make sure you annotate. If you're going to a new boss fight, you have to balance quality versus quantity of pulls. And that is something that there's no answer that I'm going to be able to give you that's going to just dictate what that number is. It varies by guild, it varies by, you know, player, and it varies by progression level. You know, if it's a guild that is, you know, somewhere in the, you know, world 2000th range, or if it's a guild that's somewhere trying to get into the top 10, top 15, top 20, whatever. You know, all those matter. That's just something that you're going to have to decide based on your guild and go from there. All right, so just a couple of things to highlight on that is, you know, let's take, let me think of a good fight. Take Spine, Heroic Spine of Deathwing. This is a fight that we went over last 2 weeks ago in the weekly walkthrough or whatnot. But that was a fight where you could literally spend, you know, 20 to 30 minutes between pulls talking about, like, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, we could do that. That kind of stuff is good, but you need to balance that with just getting pulls in and getting people comfortable with the fight. Because it doesn't matter how much you're theory crafting, and for people that are veterans of the game and things like that, you will know that, you know, you can be theory crafting for 20 minutes and your idea, you know, based off of one small tweak that you wanted to make, and before you know it, you end up with a whole new strat, when you really just kind of needed to maybe tweak one thing and go with it and see how that went. So that's a huge thing that as a raid leader you need to be able to maintain control of. And, you know, you're not always going to make the right call, but the bottom line is you've got to make a call and stick with it. It's like, okay, well, let's make this change and that change, and we're going. You know, and that's up to the guild at that point to be like, okay, boom, you know, that's the game plan, let's make it happen. You know what I mean? So just I stress again, quality versus quantity. You have to balance that, and it's a very key point of how well you're going to be doing on progression, is how well you're able to balance that. Okay, moving on from that, we're going to go over positioning. Okay, and real quick to touch on this. This is a website that prior to Dragon Soul, I'm going to go ahead and link this in stream chat. I'm going to throw this in here. This is something that I'm not sure if a lot of people are familiar with. And for people that aren't familiar with this website, I mean, if you're not comfortable using this, I mean, always you can hit Alt-Z, remove your UI from your screen and take your own screenshots, you know. So that's kind of what we did with Dragon Soul, since this didn't have Dragon Soul. But you guys get the picture. I can use this as probably a really good reference point. So we're going to create new. We're going to go ahead and go to, let's go to Firelands. Let's select Encounter. Let's go with Riggnaros. Okay, this is a fight where, and all it does is gives you an overview of the room. All right, and just to give you an idea of what we kind of had going on our initial Riggnaros strat is we had 4 camps, right? And doing stuff like this lets people just visualize without having to get the pulls in and waste time. Okay, this is a perfect example of quantity versus quality. You take things like this, and you can use Visual Age, you can use whatever. You can use MSPaint for this as well. And I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute. You know, if you don't have super baller, you know, websites that have overviews for you, you know, you just pop in MSPaint. You see right here, this was on our Zanoz, and this was one of our initial strats that we were going with, and we were going to kite the orb, or I'm sorry, not kite the orb, we were going to bounce the orb between both sides of the pool. And so he says orb kite between 1 and 2 while melee turret on the boss. Move boss into the path when you want to phase change. So basically what we were going to do, we were just going to have the melee sitting on the boss with it in the middle. The range we're going to be bouncing, and this isn't the strat we ended up using, I'm just using this as an example, alright? We were going to be bouncing, and this is on PTR, that's why my UI looks like complete dog shit here, just for the record, alright? And UI, you really don't have the opportunity to play with tons of add-ons. You just have like a unit frame add-on, a bar mod, and that's it, you know? So, yeah, this is just an example of what we were using in Paint. You know, this gets the same point across as this website here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and full screen this, that way you guys can see what's going on here. You know, this, say, if you were going to, the way we were doing RAG initially is the, whoops, one sec. The spawn points for the seeds were going to be like here and here, and we basically, if you were in like a group, the circle and the I mean, you guys get the point. You're just using these as reference points. So the way we were doing it initially were circle and triangle were coming from here, and then moon and star were coming from this side. And then these people, DPS, you know, you basically have a crossing pattern between the elementals in phase 2, and you just used, you know, you were hopefully killing them before they got to the other group and things like that. So, I mean, this is just an example of that. I mean, you could go to anywhere, say like when we were doing Bastion of Twilight, we were doing Cho'Gall, like we had, you know, where were we going to put the slime puddles and things like that. You know, we were talking about dropping them back here. We didn't have a warrior tank at the time, so we couldn't just pile them up with Heroic Leap efficiently. So what we ended up doing was just making a diamond of puddles, and it would funnel in. So what would happen with that is exactly what you're looking at. We basically, I dropped one in the very back of the room by the steps, and I mean, you can see this from our kill vid, and you have like the boss and the raid in the middle, and we would just form a diamond with the puddles instead of one, you know, small clump, and, you know, just go from there. So, and just having this on a document and having your raiders just sit there and look at it and be like, do you understand what's happening? This is where this needs to be. You explain why. You know, I mean, this thing even has stuff that's just like bad, as in like, don't stand here. You know what I mean? Like, you can use MSPaint. If it doesn't have what you need, just take it from here, then use Paint to modify it or whatnot. The bottom line is you need to have references, visual references. This cuts down on the amount of pulls that you're going to need to be doing on a boss substantially, because instead of just pulling 5 times for someone to see it, you may have a guy that can just look at a diagram and it click in his head, and that saves you the 10 pulls that that guy would have needed to do his job correctly, if that makes sense. So that's something that, as a raid leader, just doing stuff like this during non-raid hours, you know, that's, raiding doesn't just end when the raid's over as a raid leader. It's your responsibility to be doing stuff like this outside of the raid. It's your responsibility to be doing stuff like going through logs, which we're going to get through and get to in a minute, and things like that. That's your responsibility to make sure that you're putting that time in outside of the raid hours, because that's the kind of stuff that's going to make your guild successful. And I'm not sure if you guys watched the World First trailer or whatnot that I had. I mean, you hear me in the trailer saying, like, it's not all about just showing up and playing WoW. It's a lot about, you know, putting the time in outside the gym, you know, and what I mean by, or, you know, that's, or I'm sorry, it's not about what you do on the field, it's about putting the time in at the gym. That's just a sports metaphor, you know. If you're a football player, you don't just show up on Sunday and play the game. You've got to be in the gym during the weekday doing your workouts and things like that. I mean, it's the same principle in, you know, it's a pretty good correlation between the two. You know, whatever you want to dress it up like, make it sound, you know, draw a different metaphor if you need to, but that's the point I'm trying to get at. You've got to put time in outside of the raids. And using visual aid for positioning is huge, okay? And this is just a website you can use. I also showed you can use Paint. I mean, I could go through my pictures and on my hard drive and find tons of stuff from Heroic Lich King to whatever, you know what I mean? So, another quick thing about this is once you take things like this, you don't have to pull the boss to make sure everybody's on the same page. a lot of times doing dry runs is very beneficial. So if you're gonna say you're in there, you're pulling, say you got this diagram, right? You show it to people, be like, this is a game plan that we're going with today. You know, you don't want to be over here. These are just arbitrary, you know, whatever. This doesn't make sense. I'm just using this as an example. You know, like there's no harm in staying on this side of Chogal, but say that there was something over there that's bad, and you had to get people in these camps and things like that. You want to set people up in those positions before you pull. Actually, this just made me think of something. This is a perfect fight. Something like this. You've got Ascendant Council, okay? If you guys did this fight on progression, you had to have specific camps, and it could not chain between people, okay? This would be a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You put camps in each position, just like this. You save this document. You put it on your guild forums, whatever, okay? And we'll get into the forum involvement in a minute. And it allows people, you know, these positions are just thrown out there. They don't mean anything. But this gives people a visual indication of where they need to be. Okay, this might sound repetitive, but I'm telling you how important this is. It saves hours and hours of your time on progression. And not only are you saving time, you're increasing morale, because no one wants to be around wiping to the same stupid shit over and over and over. Because once you start wiping, you get the snowball rolling. You guys all know how the snowball works. The more and more, you know, it starts rolling, the faster it goes down the hill, the more snow it gets, and the bigger the snowball grabs and things like that. So, you know, you want to eliminate the snowball from getting bigger and bigger. You want to make things to be as efficient and as, you know, clean as possible. And visual aids do that. So, and like I said, doing dry runs, having people, like, you know, take this position, take this thing. If this was the fight we were doing, I would put this on the forums. And I would go through the forums and I would be like, this is who is in X group. You know, say it's like, say I would be like, that's Affinity, Zaris, you know, Shinna, and Opti. And then Moon is Ataxis, Zonker, Dexter, and Brightleaf. You know, those are just players in our guild. You assign people positions, and they can look at it on this and just be like, okay, that's where I'm standing. And then that way, whenever they're messing it up, you're just like, dude, you've got a diagram. Look at where you need to be standing, and you have them go stand there before you pull. And you just do a dry run. And then you have people group back up and you'd be like, go there again. You know, it may seem stupid. It may seem like you're being, you know, handheld. But I'm telling you, just doing that shit 5 or 6 times during a dry run that takes 30 seconds. You don't have to worry about getting to the end of the fight that took 12 minutes of perfection just to have somebody fuck it up, you know, and things like that. I mean, these things are invaluable, okay? One thing that I just thought of is, like, say that this was Rag Phase 4, right? Say you had, say you're dealing with the Deluge camp, or back whenever you could spawn geysers. You could just have your camps and put them in here just like this. And you have people understand how each camp worked. You know what I mean? So, and you have them making their diamond or whatever shape you guys made, and you tell them that's where they're standing, and they can sit there and look at this until it clicks in their head, and then they, I mean, of course, it's not going to remove every bit of the wipes that are probably going to happen, but it's going to cut out on, you know, 2 or 3, say it even cuts out on 1 wipe per person. You're saving 25 wipes in a 25-man guild. That's almost an entire night of pulls, okay? That's just making it more and more efficient, all right? So I'm not going to harp on that and beat a dead horse anymore. You guys get the picture that I'm going at with that. Visual aids are important. If you don't want to use a website, use MSPaint, whatever. Just make it happen, okay? Comp, okay, another thing that we were going to talk about. Raid comp tool from MMO Champion. All right, this is something, I'll toss this link in stream chat. Okay, something like this, it may seem redundant, it may seem unnecessary, but just doing things like this is very, very key to making sure that you're not missing a raid buff, because I can tell you from past experiences, you know, in some of the higher end guilds, it's not as much of an issue because, you know, you've got people that are double checking each other's work, but a lot of times in like mid-range or lower guilds, you know, I've been a part of that. You know, you may only have 1 or 2 people that are really looking at the raid's best interest, and a lot of the times they can't catch everything. And this is coming from me personally. I remember when my guild was doing progression back in Wrath of the Lich King, a guild that I was the leader of. You know, we overlooked not having Wind Fury for an entire night, you know, and things like that. So, I mean, and even in higher end guilds, it's happened to us. There's been nights where we forgot to put, you know, we took a Feral Druid, switched him with one of his alts, and, you know, all of a sudden, boom, we didn't have Sunners the whole night and no one caught it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, people make mistakes. That's just why it's always good to run things through like a raid comp. And I know there are add-ons that track things like that for you as well. But, you know, bottom line is you need to make sure that you have all the raid buffs. And if you guys aren't familiar with this, you just basically make your raid full of, you know, whatever it is. And then on the right here, it shows you what you have and don't have. You know what I mean? So we can make a quick 10-man here. You got a Balanced Druid, Arcane Mage, Holy Paladin, Disc Priest, and Resto Shaman with a Feral Tank and a, let's see, you get a Red Pally. So for whatever reason you're, you know, you enjoy making things as hard as possible, you bring an Enhanced Shaman, and say your rogue doesn't know how to play anything but combat, okay? So you've got all this stuff, right? Well, that covers the majority of stuff. You do not have, you know, the Warlock / Fire Mage spell critical strike chance. And a lot of times in 10-man, you're not going to have every single raid buff. It's kind of hard. But in 25-man, you can and you should. You know, that's not really a buff that's that big of a deal. Let's say you don't have, a Red Paladin. Let's say you don't have an Arcane Mage. So let's say that you had to bring a Frost DK and a Shadow Priest, right? Okay, now you're dealing, you don't have 3% damage. That's a pretty big deal, all right? And you don't have int and things like that. So, I mean, it's just good to know what buffs you have and things like that. So whenever you're stepping into a new fight and you're going to be adjusting the comp, make sure that you keep up to speed with the amount of buffs that you need to have. And what, you know, make sure you're not overlooking or missing anything. More of a problems in 10s than 25s, but you guys get the picture, okay? Another huge thing that we're going to go over right here, timings on fights. Like when you're in there pulling a boss for the first time, you know what I mean? Let me just get a video reference up super quick. Alright, we're going to go to my video manager on my YouTube. Let's go with... I've got a Sinestro clip here. Let's just go with this. Okay, this is my Sinestro. Okay, cool. Alright, we're going to let this buffer in 720. And then I'll get back to it. Actually, it's buffering pretty quick. Okay, so let's say that this is the first time you're going into this fight. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go ahead and throw this link to you guys if you just want to watch it for whatever reason. But, you know, if you guys want me to look at some of your raid comps, you can use that raid comp tool, toss it in raid chat, and I'll go over it and tell you my opinion of it. You tell me the fight and things like that. You know, we're just going to use this real quick. We're not going to go through the whole video, but just go say this is the first time that we're pulling the fight. You know, right off the bat, you just want to get some pulls in. And another thing that we didn't talk about, like that we're kind of getting into now, is dealing with timings. Okay. When you're learning a fight up front, a thing that you need to know as a raid leader is you need to be using Lust or Heroism, whatever applies to you. You need to be using that early just to let people see more of the fight. You know what I mean? Like, even though you're going to need it for the execute, it's not really doing shit for you until you get to that point in the fight. So you need to be using that at the beginning, or, you know, at whatever time the fight really gets hard, right then, just, you know, you need to have it on a hair trigger, just like, boom, okay, use it. Let's see, you know, let's get through this and then see what's next. You know, I mean, the game's kind of changed a lot since the Dungeon Journal, but to be honest, you know, I mean, it kind of does take some of the fun out of it, but, I mean, you still got to put the puzzle together. You know, it just kind of tells you what you're dealing with. It's still going, the talented guilds are still going to be the ones that get it done first and things like that. So it doesn't really take away a lot from actually implementing things and figuring out how to make them work. It just takes away from learning the abilities and what they do, okay? So, you know, yeah, let's go ahead and play this here and go with it. You know, so say like right now, you don't really know what's going on. This is the first time you pull the boss, and this is a hypothetical. This is actually when we killed it, but we're going to just say this is the first time that we pull it, right? So you're going at the beginning. It starts at 50%, you know, flame breath, whatever. You know, you don't really know what's going on. You see some whelps come out and things like that. Fight doesn't really get hard right now. You're trying to see the fight and what's going on. Say this is the first time in here, you probably call it to kill the whelps. That would be a time that you would use less. You'd be like, let's just kill those and see what's happening. And you just make slow and steady increases throughout the fight and things like that. you know, and then all of a sudden you get to the phase change. You've got a lot of whelps up. You get to that point, you know, you don't need to use lust after the second or third pull. Once you figure out that you can just push the boss pushes at 30%. You know, this is a perfect example actually. Say that you find out, okay, the boss pushes to the next phase at 30%. Okay, well, let's start getting consistent phase 2s, and then we can start getting consistent phase 3s in return. Okay, so what I mean by that is, like, we need to pop less at the beginning to make sure that we're always getting to phase 2, you know, and you just want to use lust or any cooldowns really to your advantage. The same thing is applied for things like barrier, you know, raid, anything, man. Any raid cooldowns, tranks, you name it. You need to be in the habit of just using all that shit up front and just trimming back on it. You don't ever want to just go in and saving things. When you're going into a fight at the beginning, you want to just be unloading as much as possible, everything that you've got, and then you just slowly and steadily make progress, figure out what we don't need, what we do need, get people comfortable with it, and things like that, okay? So, you know, definitely make a note of that as well. And I'll go over an overview of everything that we're covering, and then you guys can, you know, go back and watch this on YouTube if you want to or whatnot, and you know, and get a little more in depth if you want to show it to your guild or, you know, whatever. So timings, and another thing about timings is, you know, I mean, fraps is huge. That's kind of what I was referencing here. You can watch a video, you can be like, well, okay, it took us, you know, let's go back to the video here. Let's say that the boss pulls at, okay, here we go. Boss pulling at, you know, say 10 seconds into the video, starts at 60%, whatever. Say at 10 seconds, you know that she phase changes at a minute 20. So you know that it took you a minute and 10 seconds to get through that phase. You need to start documenting times, okay? And I'll get into commenting on your guys' raid comps in a second. You need to make sure that you're documenting these times. And another thing you guys saw, if you were here the other week when we were doing the one-on-one spine eval with Lindorn or whatnot, you saw what I was doing for him. I was looking at the amount of time it took them between Amalg pops. Things like that matter. You know what I mean? And as a raid leader, that's your job to look and find out those times and make sure that you're making it as maximized and as efficient as possible. Because you need to be popping a plate on spine once every 90 seconds just to keep up with the on-use trinkets that people had during progression. You had everybody get an on-use trinket, and I mean, those are huge. I mean, it's so much of a stat when you pop it. You know, you had to more or less balance your tendon pops around having the on-use trinkets up. And the way the fight went is, like, once you were in the fight past like 10 minutes, you were basically living on borrowed time. You had to get the fight, you had to kill it before it killed you, because you were going to get overran by bloods, right? So you had to just look at it and know that, and you had to trim as much time off as possible. So what we did with that, you know, we go through our fraps and we're like, man, it's taking us 2 minutes and 7 seconds between this pop and that pop, and it's like, okay, well, we need to trim, you know, 37 seconds off of that Amalg. You know, it's got to happen. So at that point, you reprioritize shit. You're like, okay, we're going to take people off this job, that job, whatever, put them on this. You need to itemize to be able to keep up with that. You know what I mean? So it is very important that you understand how the timings work for each specific fight. Sinestra gave you an example here with, like, you know, knowing that phase 1 was going to be about a minute 10, you know, use less there, and, you know, get into the fight further on. You find out you need less later on, whatever. You know what I mean? So you guys get the picture. If you don't, just ask some questions. We'll get back to that. All right? Timings. That's what that was covering. Cooldowns. This is kind of goes into timings and whatnot, but it also doesn't. You need people in your guild to be looking at stuff like this. This is something that I do after a boss fight on progression. I go into World of Logs, I go into my buffs cast, and I literally break down everything. And I compare that with fraps or, you know, damage incoming logs, things like that. You need to be comfortable doing things like this. And that doesn't matter. This doesn't mean just your raid leader. This means also just any raider in the guild. You know what I mean? Everybody, if you want to be serious about raiding, you need people in your guild doing shit like this, right? You need them going into the logs, clicking on their buffs, looking at their uptimes. You know, like say here, I'm looking how often I'm using Vamp Blood. You see these, boom, 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 boom. That's pretty good. Probably could have done it a little bit better. This looks like a phase change, so that's why such a gap there. And then this is all phase 4, right? So you know, if I'm not tanking the boss, don't necessarily need to use it. This is before 4 pieces. I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into play when looking at cooldowns, especially as a tank, but you guys get the picture, right? You just need to be going through this and looking at and making sure that you're using everything. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to be sitting on things. Like, you know, you see all these AMS pops. There's basically an AMS pop for every single trap that is popped throughout the fight. And then at the end, I'm using it. You want to make sure that you're not just sitting on cooldowns and not knowing it. You need to go through here and self-evaluate your own performance. Because it doesn't matter if you have a coach telling you what to do. It doesn't matter if, you know, whatever. At the end of the day, you are your own, like, you need to be, what I'm getting at, you need to be self-disciplined to the point to where you don't need someone having to force feed you information, because what's going to happen on progression is everybody's figuring out their own stuff. A lot of times no one's going to have enough time to figure out their shit and hold your hand and figure out yours. And that's what separates good guilds from, you know, not so good guilds. And that's the amount of people that are involved with each guild doing things like this on their own. If you have everybody in the guild doing things like this, you're going to be in a lot better position than having, you know, 10 or 15, 20, even 20, 40% of your guild doing it. If less than half your guild, or even around half your guild, is all that's doing this, you're more or less having to carry the other half. You need them going through, looking at shit like this, and making sure that it is completely min-max. And, you know, that goes from anything from personal cooldowns to tank or to raid cooldowns. Let me see if I can get another one up for you guys. One sec. Oh, here's a good one. Here is what we actually ended up doing with Zanoz. Okay, this was our final strat that we ended up going with, and I show you that because here was our initial one, right? This is the one that I came up with initially, and I think Juvie and Zonker ended up collaborating to get this one here, right? Let me just min-max it. So we ended up basically splitting the room into quadrants, and everybody just has, this was like, these are the 2 claws or whatnot. Then, like, the range go and kill this one, and then the melee go kill this. You know, you basically split up into groups of 5 or 6, and then each one is responsible. You know, healing is split up. Say you like 7 healed it. That's 2, 2, 2, and 1. You'd have like a really strong healer. The range, for the most part, could stay in one camp, so you could get away with less healing on the ranged, and then they could, you know, they stand on this side of the camp. You know, I mean, it's all about positioning and having people look at this, and it's like, look, understand what's going on, you know. And this is an MSPaint, you know, quality picture, because that's what it was used to make. You know, I made this in MSPaint, and you know, this is just things like this is what gets the job done. Okay. I see you guys linking some raid comps, so we'll get to that. I'm just kind of trying to, you know, tie in all this stuff. One sec. One more thing that I wanted to show you guys is, yeah, I mean, here's another one. This is something that we showed you guys yesterday during the Madness walkthrough, and that's just positioning. Another MSPaint, you know, brought to you by MSPaint, getting the job done. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what you're using. I was actually trying to find something. Let's see what I was doing here. This is another one screenshotted. This is just like, say you want to look at a specific time frame. You know, you just look at like overall damage taken. I mean, I showed you guys how to look at specific time frames and things like that. Let's see. Here's one for a druid, just so it's not only DK that we're going with here. And you know, you're looking and seeing like how the healers are keeping up their buffs on you and things like that. So, I mean, you guys get the picture as far as that goes. Okay, so I'm gonna actually try and get into some of these questions you guys are having about raid comps. So that goes over cooldowns. Just a quick recap of what we went over, and then I'm gonna go over some of the guys' questions that you guys have about raid comps. All right. So things that we talked through. These, I mean, this isn't by any means, this isn't everything that you need to be going over, but this is a lot of what needs to be going over as a raid leader going into a new fight. So just a quick recap. You know, quality versus quantity of pulls. Now, when you go into a fight, that's something that you have to balance. Sometimes it's good just to get pulls in. Sometimes it's good to sit back and talk about it. You know, and there is no right answer for every situation. It's situation dependent. That varies depending on the players involved, your guild as a whole, what problems you're having. It is something that is a very fluid thing. It's an ever-changing environment. You're going to have people in your guild that are, we've got those people that are always wanting to change shit. You've got those people that are never wanting to change shit. I'm one of the people I'm more inclined to, once I see something work, I want to stick with it because I don't want to fuck around for 2 hours trying to find some way to do it better when I know that this is going to work. That's a benefit in some situations, and it's also a liability in some situations. You're not ever going to be perfect. That's something everybody needs to understand. So quality versus quantity. And there's a lot more elaborated on that. We've had a lot of people end up joining. This will be uploaded to YouTube. You guys can go back and re-listen to the whole thing if you want to. But I'm going to give a quick recap over all that. Positioning. That was this website that I linked earlier. We use RAG, Ascendant Council, and other things as examples. Say you were going to do a strat that involved, people doing different camps instead of stacking for the, the Sons of Flame, or I'm not Sons of Flame, the, you know what I mean, the little elemental things. Okay, so yeah, what I mean by that is say they spawn on these two sides here, and then you traverse to the opposite side. I mean, you just get it set up where people can look at and understand what they need to be going and things like that. And, having people see it is going to end up saving you wipes in the long run, okay? Comp, I linked some of that earlier. We're going to go ahead and get a couple of people's comps up here. The raid comp to it is just raidcomp.mmochampion.com. That's something that, depending on your level of guild, some guilds that are really experienced, they end up catching all that stuff on their own, or there's some add-ons that track it. But either way it goes, if you're just sitting around thinking, it's never hurts to put your comp in a raid comp to make sure you have all the raid buffs, because like I said, it happens to everybody. It's even happened to us in our guild. We've did raids without Sunder and forgot all about it. Timings, I went over that. That's just what it comes down to, going through fraps, getting timings between bosses that die, or mobs that die, ads that die, phase changes, things like that. You've got to be really savvy on picking up timings. And then cooldowns. And, that was, kind of what we showed with some of the pictures and whatnot like that. So, you've got your... so here's one for a tank perspective. This has got cooldown stuff on me. Like... you look at like the healer's uptime on inspiration. It's like pretty shitty or whatnot. You just got to monitor all that, and that's something that falls on everybody within your guild. Okay, so those are all things. And real quick, just list them off: quantity versus quality, positioning / dry runs, comp, timings, and cooldowns. Those are a very, very important 5 steps that you need to implement if you're a raid leader and you're looking to how to manage your guild stepping into a fight that it has not seen before, or there may not be a video out for, or any of that stuff. Okay, so let's see. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple of these questions that we have here, and then we're going to get on to the second, another topic in its own. All right. I'm not going to be able to take all these, but let's see here. This guy here says this is for Heroic Your Size. This is your comp right here. Okay, your 2 tanks, it looks like, are a Prot Paladin. Okay, well, I guess this is 10-man. Or no, I see a Prot Warrior as well. Okay, just look at this right now from a tanking standpoint. Tell the Warrior to get Safeguard. Make sure he has Safeguard. That's an extra cooldown that the Prot Pally can have. And then the Pally can sack the Warrior. So you have a very, very synergized, help me, help you thing with your tanks. And that's one thing you guys look at is how the tanks synergize. And I can comment on that just from a tanking POV or tanking perspective. Another thing is like, let's look at the healing comp that they have. Holy Paladin, that's a staple almost in 10-mans. And then it looks like they have a Resto Shaman, Let's look at the raid buffs that you do and don't have. You do not have replenishment, okay? You do not have 3% damage, all right? And like I said, you're not going to have every single one of those. Right here you have a redundant buff. You have a Survival Hunter and a Frost Death Knight. The Survival Hunter is bringing the Wind Fury, but you already have that from the Frost DK. And the Agility and the Strength, you already have that from the DK. You could have the Hunter get different raid buffs or whatnot. I mean, that depends on their pet. I know Hunters are kind of hard to work in the puzzle. Biggest thing I'm trying to get at is just make sure that you min-max the amount of people in your raid that are bringing buffs. You've got the Demo Lock for your spell damage, and things like that. Balance Druid for the spell haste and, Kings. And then or you have 2 Paladins, so yeah. I mean, it's not bad. If possible, you maybe have the mage go arcane and get the 3% damage. It just depends on the fight. I know arcane isn't as good, I don't think, for your side. So, I mean, something like that, the benefit of having the mage's fire might outweigh being arcane. That's something that a mage in specific would have to let you know. I mean, it just depends on his ability to put arcane numbers out on that fight. All right, so that's that one. Let's look at this guy here. Here's a heroic spine 10-man. Okay, so you got sub rogue, 2 mages, hunter, feral taint, blood decay, disc priest, resto shaman. This is a very, very, very solid comp. A very solid comp. You've got pretty much everything taken care of for the most part, and you have classes that are very, very good on tendons. Being sub rogue, 2 mages, hunter's actually not that bad now since the buffs. Then you also have a feral tank, which when he's not taking bloods, he can go into cat form and help DPS the tendon. You know, just things like that are things that the tool's not really going to help you look at, but it's things like that that you need to be considering when you're dealing with, you know, the raid comp and setting it up for each specific fight. All right, let's take a couple more of these, and here's another heroic spine question. This guy here has got Frost DK, Shadow Priest, Fury Warrior, Subtlety Rogue. I mean, could it do spine? Probably, since all the nerfs. Is it optimal? No. I mean, you don't have a mage. You only have 1 rogue. You've got double Holy Paladin, Resto Shaman, which isn't bad, but, you know, you need a Disc Priest is really solid for that because of the way the absorbs work. The later you get in the fight, the less HP you're going to have. Barrier is something that's really good. I mean, it's not that big of a deal because you can AM it with another Holy Paladin. So your healing comp isn't bad. The Resto Shaman's almost a must, so that's good just because of how Spirit Link works, Mana Tide, Healing Rain, things like that. The Feral Tank's good. Prop Pally, yeah, he's going to be your kiter. So, I mean, it's not bad. You just, it depends. Your Shadow Priest is going to have to be, one sec, let me mute my Skype. Your Shadow Priest is going to have to be very fluent. I think you have to go a Mastery Reforged build and things like that. And then the Frost DK, you know, you've got the haste from the Hunter. I would actually say if there's anybody you wanted to replace out of that, let's take the Frost DK out. You don't really lose anything, to be honest with you. And you can put some, I mean, if you could switch that with an Arcane Mage on Tendons, it's going to be 180 degrees difference, man. You're going to be like, oh my god, is this the same fight? So, I mean, yeah, that's just balancing the raid comp off of understanding, you know, the fight. The raid comp isn't going to tell you everything. You just want to get a comp in here and make sure you're good on buffs, and then you have to balance the comp based off of the variables that are included in the fight. So, you know, like I said, this raid comp isn't going to, just because you got all the raid buffs, it doesn't mean that you're good. Different fights need different classes to excel at, and that's something that you're only going to find out through pulling the fight, looking at what classes excel by World of Logs and things of that nature. All right. Let's see. Let's just trying to catch up with these questions. Let's see. Okay, real quick. People are asking how you look at these graphs that I was showing you guys. I'm going to go over this real quick. It's not going to take super long. Let's go to last week's pull, right? Let's go to last week's raid for us. We're going to go to let's go to our madness kill. All right, what's going to happen here? You need to be as a raid leader. Excuse me. As a raid leader, you need to understand how to do this. You go to a player. Let's go to myself. This is me on my second Death Knight. Okay, I'm going to go to buffs cast. So again, you go to the player, you go to buffs cast or buffs gained. Buffs cast is only things that you did. It makes it a little easier. This has everything. You just got to go through a lot more shit to find it. Okay, you click. All you have to do is click the pound sign, and it puts it on a little green bar up top. So you just go through here. You can look, say like, you know, let's look at buffs gained. Let's look at every impale that went out. Boom. There's all the impales that I took. You need to make sure that your tank's popping cooldowns accordingly. You know, you go through here, look at when I'm using Dream. Look at when I'm using, you know, Vamp Blood. Look at when I'm using Icebound Fortitude and things like that. Okay, so as you see here, for every single impale that I took, I had a Dream Up or Icebound Fortitude, and Bone Shield was up for every single one. And then during the last phase, you know, it's not really that brutal. You just you want to monitor things like AMS. So I mean, quick. That was just a quick rundown. You just go to the buffs, and then you click the pound sign, and then it basically shows you green bars for uptimes. And this shit is, you know, you can't put a value on being able to show this to people in your raid. And that goes, say I want to go look at, you know, say I want to go look at a healer, man. Let's go to a healer. You want to go to, let's go to picks, okay? Random person, no reason why I'm picking it. Let's go look and see why. Let's look at his water shield uptime, okay? You want to make sure, say, you know, he's got good water shield uptime. Let's look at, you know, how much he kept up Ancestral Fortitude. It's kind of hard on this because it's just going to show everybody it's in his healing rain. Something like that. Let's look at how many times he used his Unleash Life while moving. Let's look at how many times he's using things like Spirit Walker's Grace to get mana from his, you know, to get the heal throughput from his 4-piece. You know, just things like that. You want to make sure that his Earth Shield uptime is good. You want to make sure that his Riptide, or you know, and everything, man. This isn't limited to any specific player. Let's look at how many times he used Dream. You know what I mean? He used it one time. He didn't use it. He used it in the last phase and things like that, right? So, you know, it's you know, depending on the class, depends on the buffs that you're looking at and things like that. You know, and you just want to make sure that your healers or DPS are using the correct buffs accordingly. Okay. So, you know, that's a quick rundown of how to look at things like that. And, yeah, so that wraps up some of the things that we're going to be, you know, that we were going for in as you're approaching a, you know, a new fight. That's stuff that you need to be looking at as a raid leader. Okay, so with that said, there's another thing that I wanted to go over today, and we've got a little bit of time still to talk about this, is, you know, things that you want to look for as a raid leader, and just how you should be involved in the recruitment process. All right, like, I'm not saying that you have to be doing recruitment. All right, actually, to wrap up the, you know, things that you look for as a raid leader, you know, all this will be uploaded on YouTube. If you guys need to show this to your guild, show this to anybody, or just rewatch it for your own sake, it will be highlighted and put on my YouTube channel within 24 hours of, you know, right now. Barring any, you know, errors. You know, Twitch sometimes has issues with VODs and things like that. It delays it by a day or so, but everything is uploaded ever since I pretty much started doing the shows a couple weeks ago. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube, you can do that, and it'll let you know when it's out. And that'll go over everything that we just went over in depth if you're just now joining. Okay, with that said, I want to get into another part here for the next few minutes while we're going, and then we'll wrap it all up. As a raid leader, you need to be involved with your recruitment process, at least to the extent of knowing who you have coming in. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not telling you guys that you've got to go find people to recruit. I'm not telling you guys that you need to be doing interviews. I'm telling you, if anything, go set in on the interview process that your guild has, or at least take the time to read over someone's app if they're joining. That way you understand what you're getting, okay? And I say that for multiple reasons. You want to at least have an idea of who that person is, their background, their, you know, expectations from what they want out of the game, you know, their commitment level, all that stuff, because that's why it, you know, things like that matter when you're raiding, because you need to, and especially as a raid leader, because it's going to help you understand how to deal with that person. It's going to help you understand what kind of assignments even you can put that person on. And I'm not saying that just because, you know, that, I'm just saying it's a factor. I'm not saying that it's, you know, going to make your mind up. I'm just saying things like that come into the decision making when you're dealing with a lot of stuff. You know how hard somebody's going to be able to be pushed. You know how hard somebody's going to be expected to go. You need to know someone's limits and things like that as a raid leader. So, you know, whenever key things that you need to be asking if they're not being asked as a raid leader, you know, you need to be making sure that someone's commitment level is where it needs to be. You know, you need to make sure that their attitude level is where it needs to be. You need to make sure that their team player mindset is where it needs to be. You know, let everybody else deal with, you know, say that it's a Shadow Priest. You let the Shadow Priest ask their Shadow Priest questions, you know, things like that. And even if you have the interviewer, the recruitment person asking the questions that I'm telling you need to have answers to, you just need to make sure that you understand where they are in regards to those, you know. Because it doesn't matter if somebody is, and this is me telling you this from your guild's longevity standpoint, okay? If you're looking to improve your guild, you do not need to just be picking up people who can do good numbers and that's it. You don't want people like Terrell Owens or whatnot on your team. And I use a lot of NFL references because I'm a super NFL fan. You know what I mean? I keep up with that. You know, I mean, you guys know what I'm getting at with T.O. Like, the guy's super talented, but he just comes with super drama, you know? And in the end, he just ends up making the place worse instead of better, you know? And is it really worth putting, you know, dealing with the bullshit to get somebody that's slightly better than someone else that's going to have the right attitude and the right mindset? Because those are the type of people that are going to help get your guild where it needs to be long term, okay? They might not be as, you know, and what I mean, I'm not telling you to pick the kid that, you know, is completely worthless just because he's got a good attitude. You've got to be smart enough to, you know, draw the line at some point. I'm just telling you that you need to make sure that you don't deal with people that are super selfish or only concerned about themselves, you know, are always looking to, you know, they're padding during progression just to be higher on the DPS meters. I mean, everybody, you need to make sure that the priority is in place, and that's always team over self, you know, or you want to label it like mission over personal welfare, whatever you want to label it. I mean, it is what is going to make the difference between your guild either staying where it is, regressing, or improving itself over the long term, okay? So you need to make sure that you understand that, and that's why you need to be involved with the interview process. There's a lot more that makes up a good player rather than just them putting up good numbers, okay? And you can't have 25 people that are just all-stars that only give a shit about themselves that work together over an extended period of time and do what you need done out of rating. You know, it's just not going to happen. So that's why you have to make sure that you are doing a good screening process as a raid leader on the type of people that you want in your raids, you know. And I'm not saying that you're the person with all the authority. Obviously, there's a system of checks and balances that have to go through, but you don't want to make, because not only are you making your life harder by recruiting someone that's just a selfish prick, you're going to have to be making the guild's life harder because they're going to have to deal with that person. And this is a team sport, you know, whatever you want to label it. This is a team activity, you know, and what I mean by that is you're going to have to work together and you're going to have to get along if you want to succeed, okay? People are going to argue, I get that, but you are setting yourself up for failure if you're just inviting people that are clearly upfront, only concerned about themselves, only concerned about parsing, only concerned about their numbers, and that's it, okay? So you need to make it clear as a raid leader, you know, that the team element of the game is going to be the priority. And, you know, it depends on your guild's goals. If you're looking for that person that's selfish just to get higher, you know, kill times or whatever your guild's going for, by all means. But if you're going for ranking, which is what a lot of people do, and that's kind of what this stream is focused on, is like how to benefit you at being a, you know, an in-game raider, how to improve you, your guild, and everything around it, you know. I'm not saying you have to do everything like me. I'm just telling you that, like, 99 times out of 100, you know, if you've got a guy that's doing, you know, 1,500 more DPS, but the guy's just a toxic, you know, shithead who is nothing but a cancer in the guild, you're just hurting yourself and your guild by picking him up instead of, you know, settling for somebody that's doing, you know, maybe even slightly lower DPS, not by a lot, but by a little, but he has all the other, you know, intangibles. That's why you always hear me harping on DPS is not the only thing that matters on being a great player. You know, it's not just time investment either. There's tons of variables that make a good raider, okay? And somebody that is, you know, wanting to apply to an in-game guild, you have to be, you know, a top guild. You have to be focused on the team and its success, okay? That needs to be your number one priority. You cannot be focused on yourself more so, you know, to the point to where it's going to take priority above you know, the guild when it comes down to it. All right. I'm not going to harp on that much more. That pretty much goes over or covers pretty all I wanted to do with that. I just wanted to, you know, point out that raid leaders, you need to make sure that you're active in some role during your guild's recruitment process. Okay. That was just another point. You know, I try to bring up 2 points a week during these, and this week it was, you know, how to prepare for new fights as a raid leader, and then the second one was, you know, how to you know, how to be involved with your guild's recruitment process. Okay, so, you know, that's the raid leader discussion for the day. I'm going to take a few minutes to answer any questions that you guys have, and go over any of that, and then we'll wrap it all up. So if you guys have questions, just throw them in chat, and I'll skim through and pick a few out. Rig, we have a hunter in our guild who's 16. He does good DPS, but half our raid gets annoyed by him, and what do you suggest we do? I mean, if, I don't know, just sit him down, talk with him, tell him to stop talking as much, and, I mean, it just depends on what he's doing to make the guild get annoyed with him. I mean, obviously you don't want your guild being unhappy by raiding with people. It has to, but at the same time, it's not going to, there is no marshmallow bus where everybody's happy and, sitting around stroking each other's penises, trying to have a good time. You just got to balance it, man. I'm not telling you that everybody's going to be perfect. I'm just telling you, you have to be able to draw the line. So that's just going to be up to you. Let's see. Attitude can be just as important as skill when it comes down to your raid team. If he's a good player and worth keeping, he'll take what your raid leader is saying and change. If not, you're better off without him. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good overview of what needed to be said. Let's see. Do you think it's worth it to play a class you dislike for good rankings and raid spots? It's a good question. Not only do I think it's worth it, I think it's actually something that people have to understand. If you want to be in a top guild, you can't really be one of those people that's like, I'm only playing my main. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not saying that you need to be like, oh, okay, well, this is doing slightly better. Get off that class and get on something that you're worse at playing. I mean, you've got to know your raider. You've got to know, like, what's their raider's strong points. If they're going to be 80% of what they were on the class, say you have a mage, right? Say if you're telling that mage to get on a Ellie Shaman, because an Ellie Shaman's good at that fight, but he has no idea what he's doing on the Ellie Shaman, and he would end up doing more damage on the mage, that's that. But if it's something like, let's take Alakir, right? During Alakir, you wanted classes that could reset their stacks, and that's really just what it came down to. Because as long as you could keep resetting your stacks, that's all that mattered. It doesn't matter if you're putting out 70% of the damage you would be on your main. You can reset your stack. So at that point, yes, it would be worth telling them to get on a class that they're worse at playing. People just have to get that through their head. If you want to be the best, or race to be the best, or even be involved with competing to be the best, you're going to have to draw the line at some point and be like, listen, I'm not going to be able to play this character all the time, and even if that means sitting that person to get someone else in, it's going to have to be done, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that's just how it is. Take me, for example, on Heroic Domo. I don't want to play my Paladin. I would rather play my DK all the time, but I don't have that luxury. During Heroic Domo progression, I had to play my Paladin because of Ardent Defender. I didn't want to do it, but I did it because ranking is more important than my personal feelings, okay? And another thing, during Tier 11, it was a one-tank fight. Absalom, we needed the D-sack in the last phase, so Absalom is tanking that on his Paladin. One-tank fight, guess what? I have to sit, I mean, do I want to sit? No, try to do the Frost DPS thing, wasn't really doing so hot at that, so, I mean, instead of me sitting in there trying to learn how to do it, it was just like, you'd rather just get in somebody that was better suited overall, like a range that just sat there and turreted. You know what I mean? So it just comes down to that. People have to put their own personal feelings below the guild. And at the end of the day, the guild comes first and its goals, and then you can worry about your personal feelings. And until you have people that understand that, you're going to keep having problems. That's why it's important as a guild to make sure people get it through their head that that's the way that it's going to be. And you can't ever let them think differently, because that's just one of those things where you give people an inch and they're going to take a mile, So hopefully that answers that. Should I leave my Turkish-speaking guild? I don't know, man. That's up to you. I mean, yeah, I couldn't tell you. If you're happy there and you're cool with the environment, stay. If you want to be somewhere else, all that. How are you supposed to reward players that play for the team? Oftentimes it's a thankless job, opposed to meter padding, #1 parses. Yeah, I mean, that's just, I'm not telling you that it's like, okay, guys, play to win. You just have to, I mean, it's just good job, man. I mean, they're not going to get something material I mean, I guess that's a point you could argue. They're going, because if you have your entire team that buys into the team mentality, you're going to be rewarding yourselves by doing better. If you have selfish players, you're hurting the team. So basically the way to fix that is you just punish people who don't buy into the team aspect, and just reward people by, even if it's just verbal, like good job guys, way to play for the team, all that stuff. That's the way that you have to promote unselfish play. That has to be the environment. It's not anything like flipping a light switch. It's like, hey guys, we're going to play to win starting tonight. Dude, if it was that easy, my life would be, I would have a lot less gray hair. You know what I mean? Like, having to deal with people that are like Terrell Owens in the WoW environment, I mean, it's a never-ending thing. You have to keep dealing with it. You know what I mean? So you have to, that's a battle you're going to have to fight on a nightly, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. It's not going away. You just have to get it to the point to where people understand the priority in your guild, and it is a community understanding that, like, if you're just, I mean, and this isn't me saying that padding is a bad thing. It's like padding has its place. If you're on farm, you've already busted your ass to get your ranking, things are going smooth, sure, dude, pad all you want. It doesn't matter. But once it starts getting in the way of the efficiency of the raid week, then you've got problems with it. You know what I mean? So say we're doing 325-man raids. Everything's going smooth, stuff's dying. I don't give a shit if people are padding. They may get trolled about it, whatever. But at the end of the day, you let them have their fun. The guild's still doing its thing. All that. It's farm content. It's not progression. On progression, if people are padding, dude, I mean, that's, if you've got people that are padding on progression, you've got an entirely separate issue. And I mean, at that point, it needs to come down to, you need to tell people they either need to stop or get the fuck out of the guild. Because if they're padding on progression, at that point, they're a direct liability to the guild and its potential, placement and finishing. So, just balance it. Let them have fun with it until it starts to be a problem, and then, then address it. Okay? I want to take a couple more. Officer has rage problems. Takes things way too seriously and just quits sometimes. We're unable to do 8 out of 8. Okay? I guess it depends on what you consider rage problems. I see a lot of people that, label me as someone who rages just because I get mad at times. You don't see me screaming, ripping my clothes off, pulling shit off my walls, breaking things, I mean, I get into it. I'm passionate about what I do. So, I'm very skeptical when I see people use the term rage because, being strict, disciplined, and passionate or whatever about something, to some people may be considered raging. But, also you could hear people that are just, loose cannons to the point to where they have no direction. They're just screaming for no reason. And, if they're logging out on the guild, I mean, yeah, that would be a problem. I don't know. I mean, like, that's just something you need to talk to your guild leader if that's to the point of what it is. And just be like, look, this dude's an officer. That shit can't happen. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to take one more question here. Let's see. Okay, so I guess last question. Why don't you get your warrior 8 out of 8 heroic just in case Blizz might decide to know that encounter a warrior is best in fights? They have done BC and Wrath of the Lich King. I don't know. I mean, I will eventually end up getting my warrior in the mix, but yeah, I mean, that'll come when it comes. Yeah, we'll see. Right now, I'm just focused on getting the raid week as smooth as possible because we just transitioned to 3 heroic raids a week, and right now it's my druid DK and then my other DK just because it had the most gear, and I'm trying to get things. You don't want to have an undergeared tank in there right now, just getting pooped on and delaying the raid week because tanks are dying. So, all in all, that's the last question I'm going to take. If you guys still have questions for me that I haven't went over, make sure to follow me on Twitter. If you guys are new to the stream, follow me on the stream. Every Tuesday is raid leader discussion. Monday is heroic walkthrough. I think next week we're going to be doing Zanoz. So, mark that down. If you guys have Zanoz parses, videos, or whatever that you want me to go over, go ahead and send me a PM on Twitch with that information. And, I may use it on next Monday's show. Tomorrow is Tank Q&A. So if you play a Warrior, DK, Paladin, Druid, you guys just show up and ask any questions you have. It's more of an open forum deal. Thursday is a tank one-on-one thing. The Reddit link is at the bottom of the page. If you guys want to have me go over your logs, videos, whatever, just put an entry in that Reddit post, and I go through there and pick a winner out each week, and I get in touch with them on Skype, and we do the tank one-on-one thing on Thursday. This Friday is going to be Zoomkins. It's our special guest interview Friday. Last week was Ataxis. This week is Zoomkins. He was a Moonkin in Blood Legion. He's also a fellow streamer. He's going to get on here and talk a bit about the stuff he's going to be doing on his streams. You guys get to know him and things like that. So if you're a Moonkin, know a Moonkin, or just want to talk to Zoomkins, be here on Friday. So something going on every night of the week, even Saturdays. Saturdays is more of a casual night, nothing structured. But Sunday through Friday, we've got a show going on here at 1700, 5 p.m. Central. So all in all, good show. Hopefully you guys learn something today, especially the people that are raid leading and things like that. This will be uploaded on YouTube and things like that tonight. All right, tonight's a big night. In less than an hour, we've got our raids starting, our main raids for the week. Okay, and we're doing 3 25-man heroic clears, tonight and tomorrow night. So you guys need to make sure that you're around tonight. We're also going to have some announcements coming out this week for a lot of promotional stuff we're going to be doing with the stream. So make sure you guys follow the stream. If you haven't added me on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, you guys do me a favor and just do that. The links are below in the info section of the stream. And make sure you're sticking around for tonight and watch the raids. And if you guys have any questions that I haven't answered, put them on my Twitter. I go through that every day or so and answer all the questions that I can. And if by some reason I missed yours, just repost it and I'll get to it, I promise. All right. All in all, a good show. Thanks for you guys for watching. And we'll have some raids coming up for you guys shortly. I'm just going to chill out, run a few commercials since I haven't done any so far. So thanks again. I'll catch you guys in a few minutes whenever the raid starts. Less than an hour.